This is the Waupaca Area Public Library's Lunch and Learn.
Thank you so much for coming today. We have Mike Hoeft with us, and he's written a book about the matriarchs in Oneida who started the bingo revolution that's really taken over and really been able to allow our Native people to be self-sufficient. And so let's please welcome our guest today, Mike Hoeft.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I'm glad to see that food is part of the presentation here. Go ahead and eat, and I'll talk, because as you'll see, the food is part of my presentation too. I want to thank you all for coming. We have a good turnout here, and I'm very happy to see three of my cousins here, three Hoeft cousins, so thanks for coming. I'm going to give you a quick overview of the book, tell you a little bit about who I am, why I wrote the book, some challenges I faced, and then we can open it up for questions. And then I have some books if you still want to buy some. Now, what does bingo have to do with Indian corn? We have women to thank for developing both of them in Oneida. I'll give you some history first. This slide illustrates the legend of the three sisters, and that refers to the three sacred plants, corn, beans, and squash. The Iroquois nations believed these foods ensured the survival of their people. Now here's the fascinating part, was they grew the three sisters together in a mound where each sister benefited the other one, and scientists call that companion planting. The plants naturally help out those planted near them. For an example, corn stalks give beans a strong support to climb, and beans return nitrogen to the soil. Squash leaves keep weeds out and hold the moisture in. So they benefit by growing together. And the Iroquois people see the plants as sisters of their extended family. Much like sisters grow up and care for each other. In the old days, women were in charge of growing crops. Men hunted and defended the homelands. The Oneida tribe is one of the six Iroquois nations. They call this alliance the Haudenosaunee, or people of the Longhouse. Oneida warriors were the first allies of American colonists during the Revolutionary War. Oneidas delivered corn to Washington's starving soldiers at Valley Forge during the winter of 1777. An Oneida woman named Polly Cooper traveled with the warriors and taught the soldiers how to make corn soup. Now, it's very good fuel. I don't know if you've ever had corn soup, but it helped keep the troops alive. And it may have been the secret weapon that helped win the war. I don't know. But I can see with a full belly, you might be able to really take on the British. Now, fast forward 2 centuries to 1976 on the Oneida Reservation near Green Bay. And my book starts with this building. It's known as the Civic Center, located in a low-income housing complex called Site 1. Poverty and unemployment were high on the reservation in the 1970s. Many people were moving away from Oneida to find jobs. The tribe had little money to pay operating expenses for this building, and it looked like they might have to close it. Now, they tried all sorts of ways to raise money, bake sales, rummage sales, holiday bazaars, but it just wasn't enough. And that's when 2 women who worked at this building got the idea to start a tribal bingo game in the gym as a fundraiser. Now, many of you may know bingo was a popular fundraising method for churches and schools. They would play it in the basements, churches, VFWs. And from this humble start, a group of women built Oneida Bingo into a business that paid not only their light bill at the Civic Center, but also began to finance other tribal programs for the elderly and the needy. Profits were used to build a second and the current home of Oneida Bingo, the Irene Moore Activity Center, that's in the top photo. And as you may know, bingo is a very social form of gambling. You play it together with a bunch of people. And it's more fun in a crowd, and it doesn't end until someone in the group wins. Oneida Bingo served as a model for other tribes, and Oneida, the tribe, played a role in the development of the national Indian gaming industry, which now includes casinos. But this book is not about buildings, it's about people. It's a personal story about women leadership and extended family. It's about community building and saving a native culture on the brink of being lost. It's about making sacrifices in order to provide for the kids and the elders in the community, like those shown here at Oneida Daycare. And I think that what these women did was heroic, not unlike what women anywhere do for their communities. So what's unique about this book is that it tells the bingo story through the eyes of these two moms, Sandy Ninham Bramer and Elma Webster, who got the idea for tribal bingo. The two women have different skills and different personalities. That made them a good team. Elma was the bookkeeper, accountant, and tribal treasurer. She knew the numbers. Sandy knew the people and was good at hosting events. So working together, they accomplished what neither could do alone. As a girl, Sandy dreamed of becoming a wife and mother. She never expected to have a career outside the home, let alone start a business. Now, how do I know that? Well, Sandy is my mother-in-law. I'm married to her daughter, Patty, and I learned from Patty how she grew up seeing her mom as both a mother and a manager, because Sandy would bring all of her kids to work bingo with her at the Civic Center as volunteers. Even though they were like 6 years old, they would just pick up the trash, do stuff just to make themselves useful. So the family life revolved around the bingo schedule. This is my wife, Patty. I met her when we both worked at the Green Bay Press-Gazette newspaper. She was a reporter and I was a copy editor. And that's our oldest daughter in the baby jogger. Patty wrote this column for the Press-Gazette more than 20 years ago. And that daughter, Lauren, is now 26 and is married and maybe starting her own family soon. I just can't believe how that time has gone by. And these are my parents. My dad was a United Methodist minister and a World War II veteran, and my mom was a high school journalism teacher. I inherited her love of books and love of reading. She always dreamed of writing a book, but never got one published. So this book is dedicated to her. Our family was not rooted to one place. My mom grew up in Fort Atkinson, and my dad graduated from Amarillo High School, so I have a lot of cousins, central Wisconsin. I was born in Green Bay and grew up in Kenosha. So I tell you about my family because you might be wondering, so how did a white guy come to write a book about Indian bingo? Well, I'll tell you, it was my wife's idea. So for years, Patty told me that somebody ought to write a book about the bingo moms. And I always thought someone else would write it. I was busy with my career at the newspaper, but the newspaper industry was changing. And then I faced a serious health scare with lymphoma in 2009. And when I recovered from chemo, I got the brilliant idea to quit my job on the newspaper so that I could write the book. Now, having an unemployed writer for a husband was definitely not my wife's idea. That was mine. So quitting a job when we had 2 daughters in college was a risky move. It was a gamble. But I felt this was a story worth telling. So here I was, holding a pair of queens. Now, what would you do in my place? Hold them, or fold them, or double down? Now, that may sound like I'm a betting man, but I'm not. I don't gamble, and I don't like to play cards. But still, isn't life a little bit of a gamble itself? We take risks with life decisions every day. You know, life's a gamble. So what I did was kind of spread my bets. I went back to school and enrolled in a paralegal program at NWTC and took night classes because I figured I needed a new career, a second career anyway. And I got a part-time job as a bellman at the Radisson Hotel in Green Bay, and I started working on the book. So as I started interviewing people, the more intrigued I became by the story because it went much deeper than I thought. I learned the moms had to face obstacles from inside and outside the tribe. The state believed tribal bingo was illegal. And one of the turning points in the book hinges on whether Brown County Sheriff's deputies would raid the bingo hall, arrest the moms, and shut the place down. This is an excerpt of the sheriff's letter warning the tribe that the county will take action because Oneida Bingo was not complying with state law. Tribal leaders said they didn't need a state license, that bingo operated under tribal ordinance, under their own sovereignty, self-government. This is Percy Paulus. He was tribal chairman. And as you can see, he was known for saying that. He always defended the bingo managers, and he would reassure them saying, you know, don't worry, we'll get you out of jail no matter how many years it takes. Now, so he had a good kind of sense of humor where he'd kind of downplay the seriousness of the threat. And you might wonder, so did the bingo managers get arrested? Was there a raid? Well, you'll have to read the book to find out what happened. But I will say that the Oneida Bingo conflict arose during a decade known for civil rights, marches, social unrest, and Native American activism, and the push for civil rights. AIM, the American Indian movement, dominated headlines in the 1970s. There were many incidents back then. The Alcatraz Island takeover, the march on the Bureau of Indian Affairs office in Washington in 1972, Wounded Knee, South Dakota standoff. That's where some of those pictures, the guns, come from. That was in '73. And then closer to home in Wisconsin, many of you know the Menominee Warrior Society takeover of the Gresham Novitiate, 1975. So that was '75, and then here, you know, the bingo was '76. So with those events fresh in mind, some thought the conflict in Oneida with the state officials could very well turn confrontational. This is Peter Nazi, the late judge, and he was Brown County District Attorney at the time. And Royce Finney was Assistant DA prosecuting the Oneida case. I give them credit for keeping cool heads. The tribe and the county attorneys both knew this was a potentially explosive situation, and they didn't want emotions to get out of hand at the bingo hall. So the attorneys on both sides wanted it settled in court, not on the streets. This was a big story that went largely unreported in the media at the time, probably because there was no blood. You know, no bloodshed, no story, right? Yeah. Yeah. So to uncover this story, I got help from several sources. I interviewed a lot of people firsthand. My mother-in-law, Elma, and she led me to other people like the tribal attorneys. The Oneida Tribal newspaper, shown here, It's called the Gully Weezox, and that means she looks for news. And that was a gold mine of information because they had just a lot of it documented by date and time. And so was the Federal Court Archive in Chicago. Public libraries with their local history departments were just a very big help, and I relied on Brown County Library. Let's see, the Neville Public Museum helped me locate photos. I also relied on the tribe's oral history archives on leaders like Chairman Percy Paulus. And it was Percy who started calling the bingo managers the Bingo Queens. And so his nickname for them inspired the book's title. Now, check out this chart. It shows that in just over 20 years, between 1977, say, and 1997, the Oneida Nation went from having the highest unemployment rate in Brown County to becoming its largest employer. And I think that's amazing. You know, it topped out at 3,000. Now, after the recessions in 08 and 2010, I think, you know, it's kind of come down a little bit. I think we're at 2,500, 2,700. Bingo was just one aspect of all of that nation building that was already underway. But it provided a real needed boost for economic development. The Oneida Nation remains in the top 3 employers countywide, and about half the tribal workforce are non-Indians. And Percy Paulus was known to say that the Oneida Nation has 2 things going for it: its people and its location. The Oneida people are resourceful, and the reservation is close to markets, schools, and jobs in the Fox Cities area. So both communities benefit from growing near each other. Now, corn still plays a foundational role in Oneida life today. Every fall, the public is invited to help the Oneidas harvest their heirloom white corn in a community husking event. At the Oneida Cannery, corn is processed into retail products that are sold at stores in the Green Bay area, and corn soup is served at community events and powwows. Corn and the role of women are intertwined in Iroquois culture. By supporting each other, the 3 sisters grow stronger together than they could have alone. Dr. Carol Cornelius, who's a historian for the tribe, told me that bingo was like a new corn crop, that it helped sustain the tribe just like the Sacred 3 Sisters plants did. Bingo helped give Oneida people a reason to stay on the reservation or move back to grow their families in Oneida. Now, the challenge for the future is to keep that spirit alive. Oneida leaders try to build alliances not only across Indian country, but to find common ground across racial and economic and gender divides. So we all want to grow strong families in safe communities. Now, one message of the book is about the importance of oral history and storytelling. Every tribe, every family has a story to tell. You can probably think of a relative or elder in your community who's worth interviewing. Someone whose stories are worth preserving. Stories of everyday challenges and struggles help us pass on family history and our shared values to the next generation. No matter what your heritage, whether you're American Indian or Italian or Asian or German. So I'm grateful to Sandy and Elma for allowing me to tell their story. These 2 moms don't take credit for starting Bingo. They say it was a group effort of men and women and that they couldn't have done it alone. I think they're being a little too modest. The Bingo Queens inspired new generations of boys and girls to become leaders, to give back to the community, to think creatively, to try something new, and not be afraid of taking risks, and to believe that anyone can grow up to run a business. So thanks. That kind of that concludes my prepared remarks, but I'll take questions, and maybe maybe it'll help. I'll just give you a little bit more history here too. It didn't really come up in my presentation, but you might have noticed that Oneida is they're from like the eastern part of the country. They're originally from upstate New York, and that's how they got to be part of they were caught in the middle in the Revolutionary War because some of them allied with British, some with the American colonists, some had French sympathies, Dutch. You know, there were all those European powers that were fighting over the territory, and they didn't know who to try to, ally themselves with. The Iroquois tried to stay neutral as long as they could, but they couldn't. They had to finally take sides because there was just war everywhere. So they say Oneida sided with the American colonists largely because of a missionary, Samuel Kirkland, and he was a Presbyterian, and he had been raised in the very politically charged New England, Boston. I think he came from Boston. But anyway, so Oneida and Tuscarora were the two Iroquois tribes that sided with the Americans. The others sided with the British. So then here you have, like the other tribes are Mohawk, Seneca, So they sided with the British. So then you have Oneidas kind of fighting their own brothers and cousins, So it was civil war, for everyone, for American colonists. Everyone took a side. So after the War of 1812 ended, then New York was being colonized, and the Oneidas were kind of forced out, and so they took a water route by boat to Green Bay, because that was the next kind of available land, and they bought some land from the Ho-Chunk and Menominee, and that's the reservation there. So this is like right outside Green Bay and De Pere, you probably know. Anybody been to the Oneida Casino? Yeah? Okay, about a good half of you. Yeah, you've been there. You kind of know where it is. And, yeah.
I lost, too.
Yeah, sorry. You got to come back. Try bingo. Or were you on slot machines? Or? Oh, wow. Yeah, that's tough. A tough game. Wow. So anyway, I just wanted to add a little bit there. If you have any other questions, I'll open it up. Questions? Or yeah.
How long did your research and writing project take?
It took 4 years from the time I started researching and until publication. But I would say maybe really 2 years was research and writing, and then the rest was just production time with the publisher. And the publisher was the Wisconsin Historical Society Press. So they did a good job. I handed it in to them, and it still took a year and a half while they came up with the book cover idea, which I thought was a good idea, a bingo card. Yeah. So that was their idea, and it took a while to get it going. So, yes.
Was gaming in the West popular at that time? Did they get any support from the West?
Like Western tribes, or?
Yeah.
Yeah, they tell me that the news kind of was carried on the moccasin telegraph, because a lot of them were in contact, and right around that same time, let's see, in Florida, the Seminole tribe started their high stakes bingo. They didn't start theirs till like '79, so Oneida was one of the first. But then in California, the Cabazon tribe took California to court over a bingo case, and then that was a landmark ruling, the Cabazon case. So yeah, there were other tribes that they would communicate with each other, and they'd say, hey, we're doing a little bingo. Oh, really? How come? Well, we raised enough for a Head Start program, or buy a fire truck or something like that. Oh, well, maybe we'll do that, And in Oneida, they did bingo to pay the light bill. So yeah, they were kind of trading these ideas around. So yeah, good question. Yeah, thanks. Yes.
I just have a comment, Mike. This is, well, where you were saying in terms of location with Oneida being real close proximity to Green Bay. I was just wondering if there are any Packer fans in this room. Here's part of one of the greatest parts that I enjoyed in the book is, as Mike was saying, is that his wife Patty, from an early age, started working with Mom, and so this is in the day before the flat screens all over the place and that type of thing. So there's a big Packer Bear game going on. Patty just happens to be the caller for bingo. Okay? So she's keeping everyone posted in the room in terms of the Packer Bear game is on while this is going on. Patty goes as the caller, okay? She's got all the attention, and all the people in the room are on her. The Packers lost. Oh. That's exactly what happened. Oh. I'm only kidding, we won!
Yeah, and they started throwing things at her for being, you can't, yeah, especially against the Bears. That's not a subject to be taken lightly. But, yeah, thanks, Larry.
I know you talk about the Iroquois.
Uh-huh.
When did Oneida change to be Oneida as they were originally Iroquois?
Yeah, and Iroquois means confederacy, or it's the name for 6 different tribes. So Oneida always was part of that Iroquois confederacy, along with Mohawk and Cayuga, Onondaga, Seneca, I think one more, let me see, Tuscarora. Yeah. So yeah, if you might hear them refer to themselves as Iroquois, and they still are part of that big confederacy.
They don't refer to themselves to Iroquois over there. They do consider their Oneida.
Yeah. And like say Oneida and Mohawk are very similar in language. You can almost tell them, almost speak the same, but so it's more of an alliance or a shared culture. Yeah, but that specifically, they're still Oneida. Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
You mentioned AIM in the 1970s, American Indian Movement. And I just wonder, since you're a historian and a writer, what you think about the fact that somebody like Leonard Peltier is still in prison, and one of our most significant Native American killers is on top of Mount Rushmore, desecrating that sacred mountain.
Is that, yeah.
My wife says, be careful.
Yeah. Yeah, is that there's that other statue, right, that's being done?
I'm just talking about Mount Rushmore with Abraham Lincoln. When the Civil War ended, he sent the army out west to kill the Indians and was very successful.
Yeah.
And the states expanded westward. I wonder if that kind of history, if you got into that sort of thing, or you think about it. You mentioned the American Indian Movement, that's why I brought it up.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't have much to say. I didn't do a lot of research on AIM, but I know, history. It's funny, in the Civil War, there was like Lincoln ordered the massacre of some Sioux, the Santee Sioux, in Mankato. Yeah, Mankato, Minnesota, right around New Ulm, Minnesota, because and it was. It's funny, I've got a relative who was killed, by, some of the Sioux during that uprising. And so there was, terrible things going on both sides, and I don't know.
It's not your fault.
Yeah, I can't. Yeah. Yes?
Do the schools in the Oneida Nation, do they teach the Native American language?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yeah, they have a tribal school and Head Start programs that have like a preschool, and they're trying to.
I mean the actual language.
Yeah, They
It'd be a shame to have it lost.
right, yeah, that's a good point, yeah. So they're not having much success with conversational Oneida, although they do teach it. But where they seem to be having some success is in the ceremonial use of the language. So you have these young kids that can recite whole, like the Thanksgiving address in Oneida. And that's amazing to hear, you know. So like our kids took some Oneida lessons, and then if they stick with it, they can kind of pick it up and learn more. So it's good to see that it's not being lost. Yeah. They have a summer immersion program, you know, and then you go out and camp and just speak Oneida and, you know, nothing else. I don't know how successful that is. That's kind of tough, you know. But I think ceremonial use of language, that's, you know, just like Latin in the Catholic Church, you know, it's a ceremonial use. So that seems to be working, and they have more kids speaking that.
What about the written language? Written Oneida?
Yeah, it wasn't written until some ethnologists came in and started transposing, and they have their own alphabet. Yeah, and they did that in the 30s. So, like as part of that folklore project, they wrote down in Oneida some of the stories that the elders spoke, and those are available in tribal school, and they did a complete dictionary that's online, UWGB. It has
How about
this.
the picture part of it? Is that still available, or is that only in the eastern tribes?
The picture, like a pictograph or something.
Yeah, I mean, telling a story in pictures.
Oh yeah, yeah. I don't know if they did pictures. They certainly communicated or told stories on wampum. The Iroquois tribes used wampum, so they had quahog shells, purple and white, and they'd put them in a certain order to make. And then it was like a mnemonic device where you could tell a story based on the beads in the wampum belt. So that's kind of like what you mean about pictograph. Yeah, yep. And there are people who are still making, you know, replicas of those kind of wampum belts. And I wish I'd brought one. Or I have a picture of, you know, what a wampum belt looks like, and it shows like the Six Nations, and here's the Oneida belt. They're one of the, you know, tribes, not Iroquois. Yeah. Yeah, I wish I brought one. I don't think I have that, but that's a good point. Yeah.
I'm really interested to hear about food. And I don't know if you are familiar with some of the farming that they're doing and the apples and stuff they're doing there, but I don't know anything about it, and I would love to hear if you know of any things, or if they've if the bingo has been used to help support the farming and some of those organic farming things that they're starting to do there. I'd love to hear more about that.
Oh, sure. Yeah, now on this map, you'll see, let's see, right up here it says Junhinqua Farm. It's spelled T-S-Y-U, and that's part of that Oneida spelling where T-S-Y is a J sound. So that's pronounced Junhinqua, and that's open to the public, and you can call or look online, and they sell, you know, a lot of retail products, but they also have, some food. They have a food summit. They call it the food sovereignty, because if you're growing your own food, you're in charge of, you know, what you're eating, you know. And so they grow corn, beans, squash, and they raise bison and fish, you know. But yeah, there's some good resources out there, and the Junhinqua farm is an organic certified farm. So they grow, that picture had where they were, this is their, they have like, 6 to 8 acres of organic corn. They have chickens. It's quite an operation.
Is
And
that where the
Apple Orchard is a few miles away, but it's part of that. Yeah, and the apple orchard is really neat. They do in the fall, an apple festival right around apple harvest time, and then they have like a pie contest, or you can just buy apples, and it goes into talking about how they dry the apples, and then you have like these apple chips. You eat them through the winter, and so they're trying to restart their traditional native foods because it's better for your health.
Is there buffalo farm that's outside of Oneida there? Does that belong to the United Indians?
Yeah.
It does, on that great big one where they sell the...
Yep. Yeah. Now there's a bison farm right off of 54 outside Seymour. That one's private. So yeah, somebody else, a non-Indian, owns that one. But the tribe does have a herd of bison. Like if you go on Cooper Road, it's down that way, and there's even a public viewing area where you can kind of go up on this rise and look at them. It's pretty neat. And they started that as kind of to help the western tribes because they were doing buffalo too, and they needed bigger herds to kind of like exchange the gene pool. So then Oneida started raising bison, even though it wasn't really an Iroquois thing, but they did it to help support other tribes who were trying to, expand. Yeah, they could have. Yeah. Yeah, that could be. Yeah. So yeah, there's a lot of good public resources where you can go and learn about organic agriculture, the apple orchards.
Big thing going on, what time of the year, I can't remember, is it in the fall where they have the Indians dancing and they have all kinds of things going on?
Yeah, they have
That's not far from...
yeah, the powwow, the annual powwow is 4th of July weekend. Yep. And then they bring a lot of their crafts, and you can, any time of the year, you can, take a tour of some of the farm, the agricultural stuff. Yeah.
They really take care of their own people too, because I never used to know it until I was related to someone. They give scholarships to the young that want to go on to college, and even then, if they're born into the tribe, they get money every year, but they have to be registered as, because I have a relative that the mom, who was the Oneida heritage, she moved to Hawaii, and she had a child there, and they had to come back to Green Bay to register the child and prove that, that was her child and everything.
Yeah.
But then that child gets money as savings almost because she's a member of the Oneida tribe.
Yeah. Yep.
So they take care of all their people that way.
Yeah. And I think the bingo and the casino, all of those profits, they reinvest to help the tribal people, like from cradle to grave. Because one of the first things that the bingo profits were used for was a nursing home to take care of the elders, because they were in substandard housing that didn't even have plumbing, and so they built a nursing home with some of the first profits of the bingo home. And then, like you're saying, per capita, that's a big issue in Indian country among tribes, whether to take your gaming profits and you use it like it's a shareholder dividend, and then you give it out to the shareholders, the tribal members, or do you reinvest it in the infrastructure and capital improvements? So that's kind of an ongoing thing where, Oneida has a per capita, I think, of about 1,000 a year that they send out to members. Some tribes have more, some less. Yeah, but that's kind of an ongoing issue. Yeah?
How do you and your family make sure that Oneida tradition continues in your family? Do you have family traditions that are Oneida?
Yeah, I think traditionally it's like the women, raised the kids, In fact, the longhouse, it was like the women run the longhouse, so they raised the kids and Yeah, so I kind of let my wife, you know. Yeah, she takes care of the indoctrination. So my role is just kind of help support them, because that's the culture that's in danger, you know. Because it really depends on this small group, you know. Like my cousins and me, you know, we're German. If we lose any of that heritage, we can always go back to Germany and relearn German, or, you know, connect on our heritage. But if Oneidas lose their heritage, where do they have a place to go back to learn it? They don't, you know. So that's why I think it's important to, kind of support my kids and say, you know, you should learn Oneida, or you should, you know, do this, because you can always learn German. I'm not really worried about them, you know, losing that half, you know. Yeah.
I have this question. Does only the Oneidas get to live on the reservation, or can, like, people like us, do they buy a piece of land and live there?
Yeah.
You
Yep.
can.
Yep. And that's kind of as a result of, the map doesn't show it, but this is like a checkerboard of tribal and non-tribal parcels. So you have actually more than half of the reservation is non-Indians own it.
But they keep buying back every year.
Yeah. So the tribe.
What happens to the person if you bought a piece of land over there and that parcel was bought by the Oneidas? Could they just kick you off your land?
Well, if you own it, or if you rent it, or
No, if you owned it.
Yeah, they can't,
But
like.
once it becomes, you know, once they, well, like annex it to Oneida.
Yeah, they
no
can't.
longer you're not an Indian, so how can you live there?
Well.
Indians have to pay property taxes?
In some cases, they do. If it's been put into federal trust, they don't. But not all of the Indian land is in trust. It's fee land. You know, like our land, we pay property taxes on ours.
Does it become under the federal thing?
Well.
If they buy back, say, another 100 acres?
Yeah, not automatically. And the village of Hobart has been fighting Oneida on allowing them to put it into trust. So, like, say if you own land there, you know, the tribe is buying from willing sellers. So if you're not willing to sell it to them, they can't make you sell it to them. So really, it's just the reservation boundaries, because within that, it's all checkerboard of Indian and non-Indian land. So it's, and the tribe has been trying to buy back land.
Well, they bought a lot of land back. I used to work for a federal
Mm-hmm.
Appleton, and yeah, they bought a lot of land.
Yeah, but they can't kick you off. They don't have like condemnation. They can't. Yeah, they can't kick you off if you own it. You know. Yeah. Yes.
White gambling in this country always seems to get pretty much tied up with corruption.
Mm-hmm.
That's the reputation. How do you manage to keep the corruption secret with the Oneida? I never hear about it.
Oh, that assumes that it is corrupt,
I
or?
don't know. Let's hope it isn't.
Yeah.
But it
Yeah.
must be a well-kept secret if it is.
Well, they go through a lot of regulation. If you have a casino, then it's a Class 3 gambling license, and you have to do a compact with the state, and then it falls under the National Indian Gaming Commission. So that's the regulatory body that comes in and audits, and so they try to keep a pretty close watch on it. Yeah, I'm not aware of any corruption, but who's to say? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, could be. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, well. Yeah, thank you.